Hello, it's Alex here, also known as Defaultsound, and welcome to the next part of the Vertex Color tutorial series. And today I'm going to be covering how to make the flower bed in our garden scene here. But the first thing I want to go over is basically how we can make this look a little bit nicer. So if you may have seen in the Vertex Colors intro video, I had this background blue and I had basically no interface showing no interface showing. So this kind of ruins how we see the scene at the moment. For example, this grid is in the way, so we can't quite clearly see how this looks. And I'm going to show you how you can hide that and see the scene slightly better. So what you can do is if you hit N on your keyboard, we can bring up this side panel here in the 3D view. And what we can do is if we pull down the display tab here, you can click on this button that says only render, and what that will do is only render the displayed objects. So if we hit that, the grid will disappear, and now we can quite clearly see how our scene is looking. And if we uncheck that, you can get your grid back and all your 3D view options as well. So that's how we can quickly check to see how our scene is looking. Now to change the background color, we're going to select world background. Now right now this is still grey because by default in our world tab here, we select our world tab. In the properties panel, this horizon color is defaulted to grey. So what we can do is just bring this value up, and I'm going to select a nice light blue here. Now this might be a little bit distracting for when you're working on it, but this can help us just get a rough idea of how things are looking. And we'll just bring it to slightly that, and we can just quickly uncheck world background if that's distracting you and just want like a nice dark color for where you're working. That's just a quick tip there on how you can get that, so we'll leave that for now. So the next step is we're going to start modeling our flower bed here. So in order to do that, we're actually going to use a few modifier techniques to quickly create that and its sort of unique shape. So first things first, what we're going to do is we're going to model one of the bricks that make up the flower bed wall. So I'm going to come here to our 3D cursor, hit Shift A, I'm going to add a cube, and for the time being I'm actually going to come back into solid mode, so I'm going to hit Z, solid mode, just so I can see the shading of our cube here a bit better. So I'm going to come into edit mode, and I'm roughly going to just scale this whole thing down. Right now I've got vertex snapping on, so I'm going to turn that off. Bring it down a bit to say about that size, and then I'll just scale it on the Z a bit. Oops, scale it on the Y. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the bottom face because we're not going to see that. So that's some optimization we can do there to just get rid of that. The next step I'm going to do is select this top face. I'm going to extrude it upward. So now we have another set of vertices here. And then I'm going to scale it along the X and Y axes again by hitting S and hitting Shift Z to lock it to only the X and Y. So what this will allow me to do is get a slight tapered effect on our brick here, and then I'm just going to pull it down a bit and then scale it a bit on the Y just so we get a nice even bevel. So that's looking quite good. And then I'm going to quickly just Alt Shift click the bottom loop here and just move it up a little bit so we get something that looks roughly like that. So that's one brick we now have for our flower bed. So what I'm going to do actually now is paint it first, because what we will be doing is using array modifiers to quickly duplicate this. So what we can do is just paint one of the bricks and then duplicate that along, so we don't have to paint all the bricks individually. So let's go into vertex paint mode, and I'm going to put on I'm not going to put it on just yet, I'm going to fill the main color of our brick here first. So we're going to come into our color palette. I think we're going to select a roughly slightly darkish brown, maybe slightly more red tinge. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that looks quite good. Let's actually just change this to texture mode so we can see it's a solid color. Let's try a little bit lighter. Yeah, that looks quite good. I'm going to come into our masking mode, and you can now select your first ring here. So I'm going to make this a slightly lighter color. I'll just fill that. Looks quite good. Now we can start to see the silhouette of our brick here a bit better. And then lastly, let's go back into vertex paint mode. And I'm just going to select this top face and give it a slightly lighter color again. So now we can really see the silhouette of that brick quite clearly. So that's our first brick we have here. So what we can do now is we're going to just roughly move it into the place where we want it. So I'm going to put my snapping on again and change this to increment. And I'm going to move it along the x-axis here, and then move it along the y here. And I'm actually going to move that a little bit further out here, so about there. And then we'll just move it here. I'm then going to come into the top view and just move it along here so it just touches the fence nicely there. So I'm going to select our brick now, and then I'm going to come up to the modifier panel, and I'm going to add an array modifier. And we're going to change the direction to the y-axis because right now it's along the x. So we'll come into our modifier panel here, we'll set the x to 0 and y to 1. So now we will get a line of bricks here when we increase the count. I actually want to leave a little gap so they're not, because you wouldn't really get a perfect alignment on a brick. So I'm just going to set this to 1.01. Let's try that. There we go, that looks a bit better. And we'll just increase our count here, and we can just go along there like so. Now what I want to do is I want to actually curve this inward here so it just kind of rounds off and looks a bit more interesting. Now the way we're going to do that is we're going to use another modifier called the curve modifier, and what that modifier allows us to do is we can define a what's called a Bezier curve to have these bricks follow that curve and allow us to define that sort of curved, the curve we want to get. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back to our 3D cursor here. I'm going to press Shift A, and we're going to look at the second option on our add menu, and that's the curve option. And we're going to look down here, and we're going to add a path. Now we'll click that, and when you click that you might not be able to see it, so you might need to go into wireframe mode, but you should see this line appear, and what this is a curve that we can use to define the direction that we want our array to bend in. So what I'm going to do is hit R and then Z to rotate this so it's lined up with our bricks here. Then if you go into edit mode, we can actually see this path has vertices. Now these vertices define the curvature of the path, and what we will do is essentially curve this in the way we want our flower bed wall to sit. So I'm going to just move our curve roughly inside where our bricks are. And then what we can do is we can first set the modifier up. So I'm going to select our bricks again, and then I'm going to add a curve modifier. Now you may notice now we have two modifiers in the stack here, and what's going to happen is the array modifier is going to give us the amount of bricks we want, and then the curve is going to bend those bricks in along this path we've added here. So in the curve modifier, we're going to select the curve we want the bricks to deform against. So we're going to select under this object box here the NURBS path we added, and now the bricks may shift a bit because they are aligned with this, so when you move this path along, these bricks will shift around a bit. What we can do if we go into edit mode, when we move these vertices around, you can see now our bricks are aligning themselves to where these vertices are on the NURBS path. So what I'm going to do is, for now I'm just going to turn off snapping so I can see what's happening here. So as you can see, if you move this vertex past another vertex in the path, the curve modifier is going to glitch a bit. You just have to be careful with where you're moving the vertices on the path. So I'm just going to move this up so these bricks are aligned again, and then I'm going to start to bring this over so we're starting to retain that curve. So I'm just getting a rough idea of how this is going to look. I'm going to come into top view so I can see this a bit better. I'm actually going to undo that movement and turn snapping on. So now I can get a better alignment here. So let's just have a see. You can get better accuracy, but for the sake of this demonstration I'm going to just quickly do this. So we can just move these vertices across here. I think I'll move this one here. I'll put that one there and that one there. So there we go. So as you can see, we have this curve modifier modifying the curvature of our bricks and giving us this interesting shape. And as you can see, we've actually got too many bricks sticking out at the fence there, so we can select our bricks object here and just bring the count down to the point where it covers the fence here. And we can actually just shift, if we turn off snapping, just make sure your snapping's turned off, we can actually shift the bricks. As you move the bricks along, it's going to follow that curve modifier. So we're just going to move it in there like that, switch it to solid, so textured, and as you can see we've now got our little flower bed border defined there. And what I'm going to do is actually just add one more brick and just bring it back a bit, like so. And because there's actually only one brick, if we go into edit mode, we can only get access to edit this brick. So what you can actually do is, if you need to make adjustments, you can adjust that one brick and all the other bricks will update. So for example, if we want to align this a bit better with where it meets the fence, we can just scale it up a bit and just tweak it so it's meeting that fence a bit better. So I'm just going to tweak it until it's lined up, and I'm happy with that, like so. So that's how you create the flower bed wall, and I hope that's giving you some insight into how you can stack modifiers in order to create unique shapes and get the desired result you want. In the next video we'll be looking at finishing the flower bed by adding a muddy patch in the area here.